Last time we explored the status of the worker, and there I sought to establish the existence of the worker in our lives. Let me begin today by defining the ego self. The ego self just is identification with the limited. Mind arising is limited, and therefore to identify with mind is to instantiate the ego self. Physical body arising is limited, and so to identify with the physical body is to instantiate the ego. Finally, doership is limited, and therefore to identify with the doer is to instantiate the ego. In fact, last time we discovered that the doer expresses itself in the mode of the worker, who in turn manifests willing or working on the world as well as on him or herself. Today, the point will be to expound upon as well as to experience the chief characteristics of the worker. There are two chief characteristics. One, the worker is a figure of suffering or dis-ease. And two, the worker is a figure of craving or clinging. Let's sink into the first understanding, exploring the idea that the worker is a figure of suffering. Go now to your direct experience of allegedly being the worker. When you take yourself to be the worker, ask yourself now, how am I suffering? Where do I notice dis-ease? Do I feel angry sometimes? Do I feel frustrated? Do I experience background anxiety? How about my experience of disappointment? Do I ever fall into despair? Do I ever, owing to the status of the worker, experience bouts of sadness? What of the burden character of the worker? How do I feel burdened and overwhelmed? And how often do I feel burdened and overwhelmed? How often, by contrast, do I feel that nervous, agitated excitability in view of work, work action, or quote unquote possibility here? Go deeper still. How often do I feel agitated, restless, Why can't I seem to sit still? Why can't I seem to be at home in my own skin? Will I never be at home in my own skin or indeed anywhere? And what about the body? Do I not have tension, tightness in the lower back, a knot, a block in the stomach, gripping in the chest, tightening, pressing in the throat, around the jaw? Or does it show up in the form of pressing or pounding headaches? Have I ever noticed how much dis-ease bodies forth quietly or loudly daily? How could I have neglected or overlooked the ways in which all of this ill at easedness shows up? Where was I? How could I have been slumbering for so long? The Buddha noticed that the ego self is bound up in craving. Craving reinforces the ego self, just as the ego self reinforces craving. Therefore, let's turn to that second feature, the feature of craving. Let it be said that craving quite simply is no to this here now, and yes to that there soon or sometime. In short, yes to that, no to this. The movement of craving just is the movement from no to this to yes to that. So ask yourself these questions. How, in view of the apparent unbearability of my suffering, am I continually or discontinuously craving? What do I seek out with the hope of relief? Is it lunch, which I, quote, look forward to? Is it the end of the meeting, which is supposed to bring about temporary relief? Is it the end of the day? Or indeed, is it something grander? Do I continue to fantasize about the next job, the next career, the promotion over on the horizon, the pivot from corporate life to solopreneurship, the move toward the startup, which indeed I imagine will be a unicorn? Whatever it is, begin to notice that you are craving, craving, craving. In craving, you can't seem to sit still. In craving, you can't seem to be with this. The mind continues to search, to wander, to move over to what could supply it with pleasure. What is it that you are seeking? What pleasure is going to save you? See right now that nothing you seek out of craving will ever ever save you. It cannot. In fact, craving is itself nothing but the turning away from the suffering you actually experience. Are you becoming clear that the worker not only experiences suffering and craving, but is itself the bodying forth of suffering and craving? Can you see now that it cannot be otherwise, just so long as you continue to identify with the limited doer we call the worker? There is no way out of suffering or of craving just so long as you maintain the tight, closed grip on the worker. You, the observer, you, the witness, begin to see all this right now. And in so seeing it, begin to experience a hint of the freedom at the very heart of our being.